The Dominion had been conquering planets for longer than most species had been walking upright. Their empire stretched across 17 star systems, and every world they visited learned the same lesson. Resistance was pointless. Surrender was the only option. Death was the alternative. High Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conqueror, watching the tactical display with all four of his eyes. His body was covered in ceremonial armor that had been passed down through 12 generations of warriors. He had earned every metal pin to his chest. He had burned cities and broken armies. He had never lost a battle in his 40 years of service. Today would be no different. At least, that was what he believed. The blue planet on his was called Earth by its inhabitants. They had been watching it for several months, gathering information, studying the primitive species that lived there. Humans, they called themselves. They had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. Their technology was crude. Their military vessels were few. They had never fought a war beyond their own solar system. His fleet numbered 200 warships. Each one was a proven killer. Each one had participated in at least 3 planetary conquests. His crews were veterans. His weapons were the finest in the quadrant. He had brought enough firepower to crack the planet's crust if the humans refused to cooperate. "High Commander," his tactical officer said, "we are approaching the outer boundary of their solar system. Long-range sensors detect minimal defensive presence. One orbital station. Several small patrol craft. Nothing that poses a threat." Clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. "And their military vessels. We have detected one capital ship in the vicinity. It appears to be holding position near the 4th planet. A single vessel, High Commander, nothing more." The bridge crew exchanged amused glances. One ship. The humans had sent one ship to face an armada of 200. Either they were incredibly stupid or they had simply given up already. "Open a channel to there," commanded. "Transmit the standard ultimatum." The communications officer worked his console. Within moments, the message was sent. It was the same message that had sent to dozens of species before. Surrender unconditionally within 6 standard hours. Hand over all resources and technology. Submit your population for assessment and labor allocation. Failure to comply would result in complete planetary destruction. On Earth, the message arrived at the United Nations Space Command headquarters in Geneva. Admiral Wells was a woman of 62 years who had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. She had studied every report from deep space probes. She had read every analysis of potential alien threats. She had overseen the construction of humanity's first true warships, vessels designed not for exploration but for combat. She read the ultimatum twice. Then she set it down on her desk and looked at her staff. "Well," she said calmly, "it seems we have visitors." Commander, her chief of operations, pulled up the tactical display. 200 red dots were moving steadily toward Earth. One blue dot sat motionless near Mars. The disparity was almost comical. "Admiral, the Resolute is the only vessel in position to intercept. The and the Hamilton are still in. The Kennedy is on patrol near Jupiter but cannot reach the engagement zone in time." Admiral Wells nodded slowly. "Then the Resolute will have to be enough." Several officers exchanged worried glances. The Resolute was humanity's and most powerful warship, but it was still just one vessel. The idea of sending it alone against 200 enemy ships seemed like suicide. "Ma'am," Commander said carefully, "perhaps we should consider opening negotiations. Buy some time until we can assemble a proper fleet." Admiral Wells stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city of Geneva was going about its normal business. People were walking to work. Children were going to school. None of them knew that an alien armada was bearing down on their world. "Commander, do you know why I pushed so hard for the Resolute class design?" "Ma'am." "Because I knew this day would come. Maybe not today specifically, but someday. I knew that eventually Something would come out of the darkness and try to take everything we have built. And I knew that when that day came, we would need a ship that could stand alone against impossible odds. She turned back to face her staff. The Resolute was not built to negotiate. It was built to fight. Get me Captain on a secure channel. 300 million kilometers away, Captain Daniel was already watching the enemy fleet on his tactical display. He was a man of 43 years with gray at his temples and calm brown eyes that had seen more than their share of hardship. He had served in the military since he was 18. He had commanded patrol boats, frigates, and cruisers. The Resolute was his first battle cruiser, and he had spent the last 2 years turning its crew of 800 into the finest fighting force in human history. "Captain," his communications officer said, "priority transmission from command. Admiral Wells on the line." Straightened in his chair, "Put her through." Admiral Wells's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but determined. "Captain, I assume you have seen our visitors." "Yes, Admiral, 200 contacts and counting." "You are authorized to engage at your discretion. Stop them, Daniel, whatever it takes." Allowed himself a small smile. "Understood, Admiral, we will handle it." The transmission ended. Looked around his bridge at the men and women who had trained alongside him for years. They were young, most of them. Ensign Brooks at Communications was only 24. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Morgan at Tactical had just celebrated her 30th birthday. Chief Petty Officer Maria at Sensors was the oldest member of the bridge crew at 51, and even she had never seen real combat. None of them looked afraid. They looked ready. "All hands, this is the captain," said over the intercom. "Battle stations. This is not a drill. We have incoming hostile forces numbering approximately 200 vessels. They have threatened our world and our people. They believe we are weak. They believe we will surrender. They believe one ship cannot stop them." He paused, letting his words sink in. "They are wrong. Every system on this ship was designed for this moment. Every drill we have run, every hour of training, every sacrifice we have made has led us here. Today we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. Today we fight. All stations report ready status. We engage in 30 minutes." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as every officer went to work, sat back in his command chair and watched the enemy fleet grow closer on his display. 200 ships, thousands of enemy crew, an empire that had never known defeat. He was not worried. He knew something that did not. Humanity had been preparing for war since the first caveman picked up a rock, and now, for the first time in history, they had a chance to prove just how good they had become at it. The USS Resolute was not like any warship that had come before it. Humanity had spent centuries perfecting the art of killing each other. Every war, every battle, every bloody conflict in human history had taught lessons that were written in blood and passed down through generations. When the time came to build a ship that could fight among the stars, those lessons were not forgotten. The Resolute stretched nearly a kilometer from bow to stern. Her hull was layered with reactive armor that could absorb and redirect kinetic energy. Her skeleton was built from alloys that did not exist in nature, forged in orbital factories where gravity could be controlled to the smallest degree. She carried enough firepower to level a continent and enough supplies to operate independently for 3 years without resupply. Captain knew every inch of his ship. He knew the sound her engines made when they were running at full power. He knew the vibration of her cycling through their loading sequence. He knew the names of every crew member and the stories of how they had come to serve aboard her. "Status report," he called out. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Morgan responded from the tactical station. "All weapon systems online and ready. Primary batteries charged. Missile pods loaded with standard and nuclear payloads. Point defense network active. Directed energy weapons at full capacity. Engines." Chief Engineer Samuel Perry's voice came through the intercom from the engine room. "Reactors running at optimal output. We can give you full military power on your command, Captain. She is ready to run. Shields. Electromagnetic barriers at maximum. Hull integrity at 100% across all sections. Nodded, everything was as it should be. His ship was ready. His crew was ready. Now they just had to wait for the enemy to come to them. On the Eternal Conqueror, High Commander was growing impatient. The humans had not responded to his ultimatum. Their single warship had not moved from its position. They were either planning something or they were simply too stunned to react. "Open a channel to the human vessel," he ordered. The communications officer worked his console. A moment later, the face of a human male appeared on the. He had dark hair streaked with gray and eyes that showed no fear. Studied him with curiosity. Most species trembled when they saw the fleet. This human looked almost bored. "I am High Commander of the Dominion. You have received our ultimatum. Your government has not responded. I am offering you one final chance to surrender your vessel and avoid unnecessary bloodshed." The human tilted his head slightly. "I am Captain Daniel of the USS Resolute. I have a counter-offer for you, High Commander. Turn your fleet around and leave our solar system. Never return. If you do this, we will let you go in peace." His mandibles clicked rapidly. This was either the bravest or the creature he had ever encountered. "You threaten me with one ship against 200. "I am not threatening you," Captain replied calmly. "I am giving you a warning. There is an important difference. A threat is something you hope to avoid carrying out. A warning is something you know will happen if the other party does not listen." "You are insane." "Maybe, but I am also giving you a chance that you do not deserve. You have attacked innocent worlds. You have enslaved entire species. You have brought nothing but death and suffering wherever you have gone. My people know about war, High Commander. We have been fighting each other since we learned to walk. We are very, very good at it." Leaned forward in his command chair. "Then let us see how good you are, human. All ships attack formation. Destroy that vessel." The transmission ended. On the Resolute, Captain turned to his crew. "Well, I tried to be diplomatic. Helm, set course to intercept the enemy fleet. All ahead full." Ensign Brooks looked up from his console with wide eyes. "Sir, you want us to fly toward them?" "That is exactly what I want, Ensign. The best defense is a good offense. We are not going to sit here and let them come to us. We are going to go to them." The Resolute's engines roared to life. The massive warship began to accelerate, picking up speed with every passing second. On the bridge, the crew watched the tactical display as the distance between them and the enemy fleet began to shrink. High Commander watched the same display with confusion. The human ship was not running. It was not maneuvering for defensive position. It was charging directly at his fleet like a predator rushing toward its prey. "What is he doing?" muttered. His tactical officer shook his head. "Unknown, High Commander. Perhaps he hopes to break through our formation and escape toward deep space. Or perhaps he truly is insane. No matter. All forward batteries prepare to fire. Destroy him as soon as he enters range." The fleet spread into a wide attack formation. 200 ships positioned themselves to create overlapping fields of fire. When the human vessel came within range, it would face plasma bolts from every direction. No amount of armor could withstand that kind of concentrated firepower. On the Resolute, Lisa Morgan monitored the enemy formation with practiced calm. They are spreading out to maximize their firing arcs. Classic envelopment tactic. They want to hit us from multiple angles simultaneously. "Which means they are not expecting us to punch straight through the middle," observed. "Interesting. They have never fought an enemy that did not try to run or hide. They have no idea how to handle someone who attacks them head-on." Chief Petty Officer Maria spoke up from the sensor station. "Captain, I am detecting power buildups across the enemy fleet. They are charging weapons. Time to engagement range." approximately 4 minutes at current velocity. Press the intercom button. All hands, this is the captain. Final preparations. Seal all compartments. Activate damage control stations. Brace for combat. Throughout the ship, crew members moved to their assigned positions. Bulkheads sealed with heavy thuds. Medical teams prepared their equipment. Damage control parties stood ready with firefighting gear and repair tools. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Perry made one final check of his reactors. Everything was running perfectly. He patted the console in front of him like it was a loyal pet. "Do not let me down, old girl," he whispered. "We have work to do." On the bridge, Captain took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been training for his entire life. Every battle simulation, every tactical exercise, every sleepless night studying military history had led to this point. "Lisa," he said quietly, "when we enter range, do not wait for my order. You see a target, you kill it. Understood?" Lieutenant Commander Morgan nodded. Her fingers hovered over the firing controls. "Understood, Captain." The distance counter on the tactical display continued to drop. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. The fleet opened fire first. The void of space lit up with thousands of plasma bolts streaking toward the lone human vessel. The first battle between humanity and an alien empire had begun. The first wave of plasma bolts turned the space between the two forces into a wall of burning energy. Thousands of shots raced toward the Resolute, each one carrying enough destructive power to melt through standard hull plating like butter. The gunners had been trained to aim for critical systems. They targeted the engines, the bridge, the weapon mounts. They expected to see the human vessel torn apart in seconds. They were disappointed. The Resolute's point defense network came alive with mechanical precision. Hundreds of small, positioned along the hull, tracked incoming fire and responded with streams of tungsten pellets. The pellets were tiny, no larger than marbles, but they traveled at speeds that made them deadly against anything they touched. Plasma bolts that would have struck the ship were intercepted and destroyed before they could make contact. The few shots that made it through the point defense barrier splashed against the reactive armor. The armor was designed to absorb and redirect energy. Where other ships would have buckled and burned, the Resolute simply shrugged off the impacts and kept coming. "Point defense efficiency at 94%, Maria reported from sensors. "Hull integrity unchanged. They are not even scratching us, Captain." High Commander stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His fleet had just unleashed enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The human ship was still coming, still accelerating, still perfectly intact. "Impossible," he whispered. "Increase fire rate, all ships maximum output." They doubled their assault. The space around the Resolute became so thick with plasma that it looked like the ship was flying through a storm of fire. The point defense network worked overtime, heating up as they fired continuously. And still the Resolute advanced. Captain watched the enemy fire wash over his ship with grim satisfaction. The defensive systems were performing exactly as designed. Now it was time to show what human weapons could do. "Lisa, we are in range. Light them up." Lieutenant Commander Morgan had been waiting for those words. Her fingers moved across the tactical console with practiced speed. Targeting solutions appeared on her screen, each one representing an enemy vessel. Firing primary batteries. The Resolute's main spoke for the first time. They were nothing like the small pellet guns of the point defense network. Each cannon was 50 meters long and could accelerate a tungsten rod to a significant fraction of the speed of light. The projectiles carried no explosives. They did not need them. At the velocities they traveled, the kinetic energy alone was devastating. The first salvo hit a cruiser near the center of the formation. The tungsten round punched through the forward shields like they did not exist. It continued through the hull, exiting through the other side of the ship before the crew even realized they had been hit. The cruiser simply fell apart, its structural integrity completely compromised. The second and third shots found their targets just as easily. Two more cruisers died in the span of 2 seconds. Watched three of his ships disappear from the tactical display and felt something he had not experienced in decades: fear. "Return fire," he screamed. "Concentrate all weapons on that ship." But they were no longer fighting as a coordinated fleet. They were panicking. Captains gave conflicting orders. Ships tried to maneuver out of the human vessel's path and collided with each other. Discipline that had been forged through years of easy victories crumbled in the face of an enemy that actually fought back. The Resolute tore through the formation like a blade. Her fired in steady rhythm, each shot claiming another victim. Her missile pods opened and released swarms of warheads that tracked enemy vessels with cold precision. The directed energy weapons carved through shields and armor with beams of concentrated destruction. "Kill count at 15, Lisa Morgan reported. 17, 20, 22. Chief Petty Officer tracked enemy movements on her sensor display. Multiple vessels attempting to regroup around the flagship. Others are breaking formation and retreating. "Focus fire on the ones that are still fighting," ordered. "Let the cowards run. They will spread the word about what happens when you threaten Earth." The battle had lasted less than 10 minutes, and already they had lost nearly 30 ships. The remainder were in chaos. Some tried to fight. Some tried to flee. Some simply drifted, their crews too shocked to respond. On the Eternal Conqueror, High Commander struggled to regain control of his fleet. His communications officer was overwhelmed with panicked transmissions from other captains. "High Commander, the crushing wave reports critical damage. They are losing atmosphere. The Silent Death has lost engine power. They are requesting assistance. The Vengeful Storm is not responding. I think they are gone." Slammed his fist against his command chair. This was not possible. This could not be happening. His fleet had conquered worlds. His warriors had never faced defeat. And now, a single ship from a species they had dismissed as primitives was tearing them apart. "How," he demanded, "how is one ship doing this?" His tactical officer worked frantically at his console. "High Commander, their weapons are unlike anything in our database. They are using kinetic projectiles accelerated to extreme velocities. Our shields are designed to stop energy weapons. They cannot handle this type of attack." "Then close the distance. Our shields may not stop their projectiles, but at close range we can overwhelm their defenses with volume of fire." It was a desperate plan, but had no other options. He ordered his remaining ships to converge on the human vessel, to get close enough that their weapons would have maximum effect. Captain saw the enemy formation tightening and smiled. "They are trying to swarm us. They think if they get close enough, they can bring us down through sheer numbers." Lieutenant Commander Morgan looked up from her console. "Should we change tactics?" "No, let them come. Activate secondary batteries. Prepare for close quarters combat." The Resolute had been designed with this scenario in mind. Her secondary weapons were smaller than the main batteries, but just as deadly at short range. They could track multiple targets simultaneously and fire in rapid bursts. They closed the distance. They flew directly at the human warship, weapons blazing. Some of their shots finally began to find their mark. The point defense network could not stop everything at such close range. Plasma bolts struck the hull, melting armor plates and leaving scorched wounds across the ship's surface. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported. Damage control teams responding. Casualties reported in Engineering Section 3. Captain gripped the arms of his command chair. His ship was taking damage now. His people were dying, but they were far from beaten. "All weapons, continuous fire. Show them what happens when you corner a human." The Resolute became a storm of destruction, fired in every direction. Missiles launched in waves. Energy beams sliced through the void. Enemy ships that came too close were torn apart. Those that tried to pull away were tracked and destroyed. The hunters had become the hunted, and they were learning a lesson that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The Resolute was bleeding. Plasma had burned through her outer hull in a dozen places. Fires raged in compartments on 3 different decks. Emergency bulkheads had sealed to contain the damage, trapping some crew members in sections that were slowly losing atmosphere. The ship that had seemed invincible just minutes ago was now showing the scars of close combat. But she was still fighting, and she was still winning. Captain listened to damage reports flooding in from every section of his vessel. Deck 7 had lost pressure. The secondary reactor was running at reduced capacity. 2 of the port side had overheated and gone offline. Medical bay was overflowing with wounded crew members. "Casualty report," he asked quietly. Chief Petty Officer checked her console. Her voice was steady, but there was pain behind her eyes. 17 confirmed dead, Captain. 34 wounded. Damage control teams are still assessing. 17 of his people gone. Felt the weight of those numbers like a physical blow. He had trained with many of them. He had eaten meals with them in the mess hall. He had known their families, their dreams, their hopes for the future. But he could not afford to grieve now. The battle was not over. Enemy status. Lieutenant Commander Morgan pulled up the tactical display. 112 vessels destroyed or disabled. Approximately 80 remain combat effective. They are regrouping around their flagship. Studied the display. The Eternal Conqueror sat at the center of the remaining enemy formation. It was larger than the other ships, more heavily armed and armored. If he could take out the flagship, the rest of the fleet would fall apart. Set course for the enemy flagship, all ahead full. On the Eternal Conqueror, High Commander watched the human ship turn toward him. More than half his fleet was gone. The survivors were demoralized and terrified. And now the enemy was coming directly for him. He had 2 choices. He could order a retreat and try to save what remained of his forces. Or he could stand and fight, hoping that concentrated fire from his remaining ships could finally bring down this unstoppable monster. Pride made the decision for him. All ships form defensive perimeter around the flagship. We will make our stand here. Pour everything we have into that vessel. It is damaged. It is weakened. We can still destroy it if we work together. The remaining warships arranged themselves in a protective shell around their leader. It was a solid formation, designed to create overlapping fields of fire that would be impossible to penetrate. Captain saw the enemy formation solidify and nodded slowly. They were going to fight to the end. He respected that, even if he knew it was foolish. "They are digging in around the flagship," Lisa Morgan observed. "It will be difficult to reach it through that formation." "Then we go through the formation," replied. "Helm, maintain course. Lisa, plot firing solutions on every ship between us and that flagship. We are going to carve a path." "Understood, Captain." The Resolute accelerated toward the enemy defensive line. Her began firing before she even reached optimal range, picking off ships on the outer edge of the formation. The returned fire with everything they had. Plasma bolts slammed into the human vessel from every direction. More armor plates melted away. More hull breaches opened. The point defense network was overwhelmed, unable to stop the sheer volume of incoming fire. "Hull integrity down to 70%, reported. "We are taking heavy damage, Captain." "Keep pushing, we are almost there." In engineering, Chief Samuel Perry fought to keep his reactors online. Warning lights flashed across every console. Power fluctuations threatened to shut down critical systems. His team worked frantically, rerouting power and making emergency repairs. "Come on, old girl," Perry muttered as he manually bypassed a damaged relay. "Just a little longer. Do not quit on me now." The reactor output stabilized. Power flowed back to the weapon systems and defensive networks. The Resolute shuddered but kept flying. On the bridge, Lisa Morgan watched her targeting computer identify the ships blocking their path to the flagship. There were still 40 vessels between them, and each one would have to be neutralized. She began firing in a steady rhythm. One target, then another, then another. Her rounds punched through enemy hulls with brutal efficiency. Ships that had ruled the stars just hours ago became expanding clouds of debris. 30 remaining, 25, 20. The defensive line was collapsing. Ships tried to close the gaps left by their fallen comrades, but every time they moved, they exposed themselves to the Resolute's guns. High Commander watched his fleet die around him and finally understood the truth. He had not come to conquer a primitive world. He had stumbled into a trap set by predators far more dangerous than himself. High Commander, his communications officer said, several captains are requesting permission to withdraw. Stared at the human vessel bearing down on him. It was battered and bleeding, but it had not slowed down. It had not turned away. It kept coming, relentless and unstoppable. Permission, he said quietly. We stand together, we die together. The remaining ships closed ranks around their flagship. It was a brave gesture, but a futile one. The Resolute burst through the final defensive line and found herself facing the Eternal Conqueror directly. Flagship in range, Lisa Morgan announced. I have firing solutions on all primary systems. Captain looked at the enemy vessel on his. It was an impressive ship, the pride of a conquering empire. In another time, under different circumstances, he might have admired it. Target their engines first. I want them dead in space. Then take out their weapons. We are going to make an example of this ship. Firing. The Resolute spoke with cold precision. Tungsten rounds slammed into the Eternal Conqueror's engine section, ripping through power conduits and reactor housings. The massive vessel shuddered and went dark as its propulsion systems failed. More shots followed. The flagship's weapons were torn away one by one. Its shields flickered and died. Its hull cracked open in a dozen places. On the bridge of the dying vessel, High Commander sat motionless in his command chair. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across his features. Alarms wailed from every direction. His crew lay dead or dying around him. He had conquered 17 star systems. He had never known defeat. And now, his empire ended here, in the cold void of an alien solar system, at the hands of a species he had dismissed as primitives. The Resolute fired one final salvo. The Eternal Conqueror came apart in a brilliant explosion that lit up the darkness of space. High Commander and his flagship ceased to exist. The battle for Earth was over. Humanity had won. When the Eternal Conqueror exploded, the remaining vessels stopped fighting. There was no order to retreat, no communication between the surviving captains. They simply watched their flagship die and understood that the battle was lost. 13 ships turned and fled at maximum speed. They did not regroup. They did not attempt to recover survivors from damaged vessels. They ran like prey animals fleeing a predator, desperate to put as much distance between themselves and the human warship as possible. Captain watched them go. His first instinct was to pursue, to finish off the enemy fleet completely. But his ship was badly damaged and his crew was exhausted. Chasing down stragglers was not worth risking more lives. Let them run, he said. They will tell others what happened here. That message will be more valuable than destroying a few more ships. Lieutenant Commander Morgan nodded and powered down the weapons systems. The fell silent for the first time in what felt like hours. The bridge crew sat in stunned silence, slowly processing the fact that they had survived. Chief Petty Officer pulled up the final battle report. Her voice was quiet when she spoke. 187 enemy vessels destroyed. 13 escaped. Estimated enemy casualties exceed 40,000. And our losses? 17 dead, Captain. 43 wounded. The Resolute has sustained significant damage to multiple systems but remains operational. 17 dead out of a crew of 800. It was a miracle by any reasonable standard. But those 17 had been friends, colleagues, family. Their absence would be felt for a long time. Press the intercom button. All hands, this is the captain. The battle is over. The enemy fleet has been defeated. I want damage control teams to continue their work. Medical personnel take care of our wounded. Everyone else, stand down from battle stations and get some rest. You have earned it. He paused, struggling to find the right words. Today we faced an enemy that thought we were weak. They thought we would surrender. They thought one ship could not stop them. You proved them wrong. Every single one of you performed beyond anything I could have asked. The people we lost today did not die in vain. They died protecting their world, their families, and their species. We will honor them. We will remember them. And we will make sure that their sacrifice was not for nothing. Throughout the ship, crew members listened to their captain's words. Some wept for fallen friends. Others simply sat in silence, too tired to feel anything at all. But beneath the grief and exhaustion there was something else: pride. On Earth, the news of the victory spread within hours. Admiral Wells received Captain's report and read it 3 times before allowing herself to smile. 1 ship against 200. Nearly 200 enemy vessels destroyed. It seemed impossible, but the evidence was undeniable. She sent a message back to the Resolute. "Well done, Captain, come home." The battered warship turned toward Earth and began its slow journey back. It would take several days at their reduced speed, but no one was in a hurry anymore. The threat had been neutralized. Earth was safe. Far across the galaxy, the 13 surviving ships reached there with recordings of the battle. The High Council watched in horrified silence as their fleet was systematically destroyed. They saw their flagship explode. They saw 200 of their finest warships reduced to debris by a single enemy vessel. "How is this possible?" one council member demanded. "Those humans were supposed to be primitives." "They are not primitives," an elderly council member replied. His name was, and he had been studying other species for longer than most of his colleagues had been alive. "We made a terrible mistake. We looked at their technology and assumed they were weak. We did not look at their history." "What do you mean?" "Activated a display showing images from human records, battlefields from ancient times, burning cities from centuries past, mushroom clouds rising over devastated landscapes. These humans have been fighting each other since before they had metal tools. They have spent their entire existence perfecting the art of war. Every weapon they have was designed to kill other humans. Every tactic, every strategy, every piece of military doctrine was developed through of bloody conflict against their own kind." He pointed at the image of the Resolute on the battle recording. "That ship was not built to fight us. It was built to fight other humans. We simply had the misfortune of being the first aliens to test its capabilities." The council sat in stunned silence. "Then we must destroy them," another member said. "Build a larger fleet, thousands of ships instead of hundreds." Shook his head. "And how many will survive? Half? A third? None. These humans do not surrender. They do not negotiate from weakness. They fight until victory or death. Are you prepared to sacrifice our entire civilization to destroy a single world?" No one answered. "I suggest a different approach," continued. "We send ambassadors instead of warships. We offer peace instead of ultimatums. We treat these humans as equals rather than prey. You want us to make peace with creatures who destroyed half our fleet. I want us to survive. The humans have shown what they can do when threatened. I do not wish to discover what they can do when truly angered." The council debated for days but eventually reached a decision. They would not attack Earth again. They would not seek revenge. They would quietly withdraw from any territory near human space and hope that the humans would be content with their victory. On Earth, Captain returned to a hero's welcome. Crowds gathered to watch the Resolute limp into orbital dock. The names of the fallen were read aloud at memorial services across the planet. Monuments were planned. Songs were written. The story of the battle became part of human legend, but found little joy in the celebrations. He visited the families of his fallen crew members. He attended every funeral. He sat with grieving widows and fatherless children and tried to explain why their loved ones had to die. "They saved us all," he told them. "Every person on Earth owes them a debt that can never be repaid." The words felt hollow, but they were true. In the years that followed, humanity expanded into the stars with new confidence. Other species watched from afar, studying the humans with a mixture of fear and respect. The story of the Battle of Saul spread to every corner of the galaxy. A single ship defeating 200, a species that refused to surrender. Some species reached out in friendship, others kept their distance, but none ever threatened Earth again. The universe had learned a lesson that they discovered too late. Humans were not a species to be conquered. They were not prey to be hunted. They were survivors, forged in the fires of their own endless wars. And when someone threatened their home, they did not run. They did not hide. They fought with everything they had until the threat was destroyed or they were. Most often, it was the threat that ended first. The Resolute was eventually retired and placed in a museum orbiting Earth. Visitors came from across human space to walk her corridors and stand on the bridge where 17 heroes had made their final stand. A plaque near the captain's chair bore a simple inscription that captain himself had written. "One ship was enough.